Chapter 7, Lois. Our family has exhausted on the night Elizabeth. Our family was exhausted on the night Elizabeth was taken. Sadly, my father had passed away a few days before. He had never been sick a day in his life, but at the end of February 2002, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. The doctors hadn't given him a good prognosis, but they believed he had a longer than the 3 months he actually had left to live. I spent every day of those 3 months at his side, doing whatever I could to offer my mother and him help, peace and comfort. He had also been strong and hardworking. He was a picture of health and very active until those last months. Dad was a devoted spiritual leader and was called to be a temple president in the Philippines when he was in his 70s. Dad loved doing church work, just as he loved to get out on his property and shovel, plant trees, and tend to his flowers to keep himself busy. My parents' home was an oasis for their entire family, especially for their 51 grandchildren. We often gathered to have parties there. All of our children loved my father, but Elizabeth and Mary Catherine had a very special connection with him. My father always enjoyed planting his garden in the spring, but when he became too ill to plant, the girls offered to do it for him. They planted corn and peas just a few weeks before he died. I knew it meant so much to him that they were able to do that. It was during the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City that we first noticed my father was sleeping a lot more than usual, and that he had started walking with a bit of a shuffle and would occasionally stumble. The family kept thinking it was just old age setting in and surely nothing to be worried about. But when his difficulty continued, we decided it was time to take him to the doctor, thinking that maybe he had developed diabetes or something else treatable. It never occurred to us that our patriarch was seriously ill. It took several weeks before the doctors diagnosed the brain tumor. They felt the situation was severe enough to operate on him as soon as possible. Before they did so, my sister was able to fly in from her home in Virginia. We spent the weekend together as a family, fasting and praying in a conference room in the hospital. There were 70 people altogether praying for my father. Dad had an incredible memory. He never forgot a thing. Just before he went for his surgery, a few days later, he was beautifully reciting passages of poetry from The Little Boy Blue, The Highwayman, and the Gunga Din. Afterward, he was remarkably coherent and could communicate easily. We felt confident that he was going to make it. Though still in an intensive care unit, he seemed to be doing great. We all thought that he was going to recover and live another 20 years. That optimism faded a bit a few hours later when Dad slipped into a coma-like state. Unless he started to show improvement, the hospital had to release him. We agreed it was better for him to go home. We were uncertain as to be the best way to take care of him there. But this is where we knew he would want to be. Ed's father, a cancer specialist, helped us with the arrangements for taking care of him at home. Despite our concerns, Dad improved with every passing day. He could sit up and feed himself, and all indications were that he was on the road to recovery. By the end of May, however, Dad took an unexpected turn for the worse. Something changed. We had a sense that his time had come. For some inexplicable reason, my father needed to pass on. My father was a protector in every sense of the word. When I was in my 20s and working as a first grade teacher, I would sometimes have to work late, and my father would meet me in the parking lot of the school, follow me in his car to make sure I made it home safely. That's the kind of dad he was, though he had no way of knowing it at the time. My father had to pass on when he did so that he could protect Elizabeth. He died on May 28th. His funeral was June 3rd. At his service, Elizabeth and Mary Catherine played a duet on their harps of one of Dad's favorite songs, Silent Night. My father's death had a profound impact on me, though I would barely have time to recognize just how important an event it would be after Elizabeth was abducted. 2 days after we buried Dad, on the morning of June 5th, Elizabeth too was gone. The evening of June 4, 2002, Elizabeth was scheduled to play her harp at an award ceremony at Bryant Intermediate School, her junior high. It was the year-end awards program where Elizabeth accepted several awards for her outstanding work. Around 5 o'clock that afternoon, Ed was driving home from work and pulled into our street where he saw Elizabeth and Mary Catherine jogging. Elizabeth was training for the high school cross-country track team, which she planned to join in the fall. He stopped to say hello and ask where they were going. They were on their way to run around the reservoir near our home. They asked for a ride over, and he jokingly told them that if they were going for a jog, they were actually supposed to do it. If you want to be a track star, Elizabeth, you better get going, he said, and sent them on their way. Everything seemed to rush at night. We always ate at 6 o'clock. By 6:15, Elizabeth was still not home, and we were eating dinner. We were supposed to be at her school by 6:45. I became concerned that if we were late to the ceremony, Elizabeth would be unable to play her harp as scheduled, and I was right. Elizabeth missed her performance. However, we managed to make it to her school in time for Elizabeth to receive her awards that night, and we all beamed with pride each time she came off the stage. Since I had frequently been away from home spending time with my father, I was looking forward to spending a lot of quality time with my family that summer. Elizabeth had been asking if she could go for 3 or 4 days with her friend's family on a vacation the day after school let out. I was reluctant to say yes. I had missed being with my children while my father was ill, and I didn't feel it was necessary to allow Elizabeth to go away. I wanted her home, and besides, we were planning to go on our own family vacation later that month. But she wanted to go so badly that Ed and I agreed to talk it over. And just before bed, we told Elizabeth she could plan to go with her friend. We said goodnight. That was the last conversation we had before she was kidnapped.